Before we even dig in, there's one of the things, and I promise I'll only spend less than a minute on who I am, and the only reason I'm doing that is just to give you a sense about why you should even be listening to anything I have to say. But then we'll move into those common remodeling pitfalls and give you some tools that can help you avoid those. And then at the end, we have some case studies that's kind of like bonus footage. I'll wait till the end, and if anybody's interested in seeing those, so I can keep going and run us through those. So to dig in, my name's Ted Daniels. I own a company called Daniels Design and Remodeling. We're over in the city of Fairfax. We've been in business for 26 years. I actually was in the remodeling industry for about 9 years prior to that, so I've been doing this for quite a while. We do full service design, build, and renovating. So and we've been doing that for 26 years. So let's kind of dig right in. So the common pitfalls that happen when we renovate, right? And I'm sure you will have heard these stories. We have the pit of change orders, right? We've all heard about that. When you get started on a project and you think it's $100,000, you sign for that, and before you're done, you're at $147,000. Like, how did I get there? We'll help you understand. Another common pitfall is what was actually built didn't match what you were expecting. You know, this is a couple years ago, I was at a client's home and we were talking about her kitchen renovation. And she mentioned a previous renovation project she had in her master bathroom 2 or 3 times. And so finally I stopped and said, well, you want to tell me about that? And she said, sure. And she goes, the project was okay. And she used that 4-letter word that we all hate in remodeling, fine. Right? It was all fine when it was done. But then she goes, that contractor was very lucky. And I said, why? He's lucky that I liked the bathtub he put in. Well, I thought that is just crazy to me. How did it get so far in the process that she doesn't even know what bathtubs could be installed? And the guy needed a bathtub, so he went over to Home Depot, bought it, put it in. Her thought was that he's just lucky I like it. So getting what you expect is a big deal. Hasty or incomplete project planning, that is a very common pitfall. Design changes, right? When you get in and you're starting, and all of a sudden you start changing your mind, or the contractor starts changing. And then, of course, we all hear about this, the unplanned and hidden work, right? An HGTV, that moment about 10 minutes into every program, they open up a wall and go, oh my gosh, look at the surprise we just found, right? I think that's, not only do a lot of projects have that, but I think for TV, it's just made for TV drama. But this is my opinion, that the high 90% of all the hidden things that you find in a project are foreseeable if somebody's looking for them, right? This is what we do for a living. We're professional home renovators. We know we've got a really, really good idea of what's inside of a wall, and whether the electrical infrastructure is going to support what we're building, right? So it just takes time and effort to look for it. So, well, let's dig into some of these things about how you can do it, and it's all about planning, right? It's not as fun, but I think if we can kind of agree on one thing, if you leave here, just changing maybe the way that you think about taking on a large project. Think design, then build, not design as you build, right? Also, another way to put it is, plan first, then build, as opposed to, build as you plan. You'll find that is the cornerstone to predicting exactly what you're going to have in the end and the costs. So let's kind of run in. Most families, every time we talk, they've got a question about setting a realistic budget, right? I get that all the time. What's the budget? So here's some things you can, let me keep going, sorry. Clear designs, architecture is an important cornerstone. Completing all of your selections before you start is paramount. A clear scope of work, and we'll talk about that. A production review and comprehensive contract documents with fixed price. All of those pieces are what planning's about. So let's dig into each one. So the budget, and trying to establish that, is often we face is, who should we talk to, right, as a homeowner? How much should you spend? And what are some important things to know about before you actually engage in the process of interviewing companies? So taking the who should I talk to first, it's my opinion that there are 3 basic types of contractors. So anybody in this building or anybody you happen to call, they're going to fit into one of 3 categories. We have small contractors, general contractors, and design build contractors. And I think there's differences, well, there are differences between each of them. So I'm going to run over those for you and give you a sense so that you can decide what is the right fit for you and your project. So if we take the small contractors, this is, you in the industry, we affectionately refer to as chucking a truck, right? We get, it's usually the company owner was a craftsman of some kind. Typically, it's carpentry. And they set out to go start a company, right? And they tend to be very, very small. Sometimes they'll have a helper. And actually, has anybody heard of a payroll company called ADP? They're put out a statistic, this is a number of years ago, that 97% of all contractors in the United States have 1 or 0 employees. Because actually, an employee, if you're the business owner, you're not considered an employee. So just think about that for a minute. Almost all of them are small contractors, right? Wonderful people, love them. What they tend to do is be a jack of all trades kind of mentality. They're going to come in, 100% of the labor is going to be completed by that person, or if they have a helper, those 2 people. So they'll be wonderful at their main craft, like carpentry. And they're pretty good at electrical, and they can do some tile, right? It's like, so you get varying levels of skill. Some of the benefits, they tend to be inexpensive. You do have the company owner in your home with a tool belt on, typically, and that's a nice thing, right? There's a lot of pride in that. So, there's some of the challenges. I mean, I won't go through them all. You can see it, but they tend to be really great on smaller projects. But some of them you take on big things. But I think they're a really great choice for you if you know exactly what you want. You are comfortable going out and getting all of the products for yourself. Like if you're going to buy a vanity cabinet, have it sitting there, a faucet, and just have them put it in, can be a really good choice. But as long as the length of the project isn't important to you, it's like, yeah, I don't care how long it takes them. They're going to do a good job. Just do it. It can be a really great choice. For general contractors, this is where you're starting to get into, a higher level of business acumen. They're going to start to have multiple crews associated with their team. They're moving kind of, even though they're still order takers and doers, they tend to start. They'll go purchase the products for you most of the time, but you got to tell them what you want. Here's your design, you know exactly what you want. They are also starting, this is where you're going to get into that artisan for their craft mentality. And what I mean by that is, especially some of the licensed trades, like if you have a plumber, it's a licensed plumber. That's all they do is plumbing. It's going to be in your house doing the plumbing work. But it also, and you may or may not know this, but anytime you have to get a building permit, as a homeowner, you can pull any permit you want. But if you get the contractor to pull the permit, which I strongly recommend, but I won't go down that path, in order to get a plumbing permit, you have to have a licensed plumber do the work. Same thing with an electrician. And so that's where a lot of these general contractors, because they're most of the time pulling permits, they need those crafts. So, but they'll still have some, like one of their carpenters might be good at drywall and painting, so they'll do that. But some of the benefits, they are less expensive. They tend to start having some systems and processes in place as a company to help organize your project. You'll start to see schedules, Gantt charts, if anybody's familiar with that type of approach. Some of the challenges, they may ask you to pull a permit, right? And you get to decide that for yourself. I would encourage you not to, but one of the weaknesses of the general contractors, they don't tend to plan. They tend to want to, and if you are finding yourself that somebody's in talking to you and the very first thing they want to get you to do is sign a contract, they're kind of pushing you into a decision when not all the details have been resolved. That's where the change orders come in. So, when general contractors have a tendency to, once you get started, to be constantly trying to, get more money from you. That's the change orders tend to come from them. It's going to be lots of issues that come up. I didn't expect this. That wasn't part of what I was doing. So, but still can be a wonderful choice if you know exactly what you want. Design build contractors, this is where you start to get a company that has the highest level of business acumen and systems and processes. I mean, think about it. I know in our company we have a 7-person design team on staff, and we have our whole production team. Just to organize that many people, you have to be organized, right? And at least ideally. So they're definitely more of a turnkey solution, pretty much across the board, right? Everybody's going to want to come in and help you figure out what your solution might look like, help you see that, buy all the product, source it, and have it in there and do it. Some of the benefits is if you really need design help, design build can be a great choice. Some of the challenges is planning takes time, right? And so it's if you're interested in having help from a company do that, there's several months worth of planning and work that goes into that. So sometimes that can be a negative. And out of the 3 categories, design build tends to be the more expensive solution for you. I mean, if you think about it, you've got architects and interior designers on staff that the other companies don't. So just even in that part, it's going to be more. But so just decide what type of company is going to best fit your project and invite those companies in. It's where you get confused is if you're bringing in a design build firm hoping they're going to function like the general contractor, or even worse, the other way around. So what should I spend is always, it's always the tricky question, right? And so I think I can help give some handles for that for you. Some of it is, and these are often questions here, what's appropriate for your own home? What is market value? These are important questions to know, right? Like, you don't want to overbuild for your neighborhood. And then what can I afford? Although I actually prefer it, what do I choose to invest? Because what you afford kind of sounds like, how much do you have, right? It's not what I mean by that. It's what feels comfortable for you in your project. So let's take these apart. Appropriate for your house. This is, I think, is a great way, at least a place to start. The National Association of Realtor Industry, they have some statistics, and I think they get this information from building permits and from their database. But for kitchens, and I've got 2 options, kitchens and primary bathrooms, but if you take your current home's market value and you invest less than 10%, you're in danger of underinvesting. And what does that mean? It means that when new prospective home buyers come in, it's not to the level that's appropriate with a house. That's the danger. It doesn't mean that you can't, but that's the danger. The other side of the coin is if you invest 20% or more, you're in danger of over-investing. I mean, you're not going to get it back, and you're just doing it because it's really important to you, which isn't a bad thing, but that's the reality. Similar with specifically primary bathrooms, they're different numbers for hall bathrooms and guest bathrooms, but that's a good place to start and try and get some data points on what's appropriate for your home. Market value is another tricky one, right? One of the things that you can do if you're interested in researching what you should be investing in for your project, there's a website called Cost versus Value, and this website is put together by it's Harvard University and one of their joint housing things, and then there's a venture with a company called Hanley Wood, and they go through and pull data annually about what the costs of certain types of projects are. This is just a snapshot of what's there, and I think this data was from 2022. I think 23 hasn't come out yet, and you can get in and I think actually you can even pay a fee and zoom into very specific regions. But what you'll find is that there's a brief description of what they mean by upscale and what they mean by mid-range, and give you a little description about the project that they're considering and what you should expect that cost might be. The other interesting part here is right here is a column that they say, the return on investment. So one thing I just want you to know before everybody goes and does this and gets panicked, that's assuming that you do this work and then sell within the first year. What we find is meaning, let's just take this top one. It says it's, you might invest $25,000 to do that particular project, but if you try and sell it that same year, you're probably only going to be able to add about $14,000 to the sale price of your home, right? What we find is that where that crossover takes place, where what you invest and what you can actually raise your price of your home to match that is about 3 years. And once you get past that part, then you can. It's never assured, right? There's no crystal ball, but you're most likely going to be able to get your return back. So interesting information there to look for sure. And you can source into regional data, which is what this is. And again, I think you can pay a fee and get into smaller, more distinct areas. But another idea which often people have is, I got it. Let's bring in some contractors and get some answers here, right? So here's a typical scenario. I'm using an addition, but we want to build a sunroom off our kitchen. We love the views of the backyard and want to sit out in this cozy room and watch all the snowfall. And we think we've got a good idea of the size, and we want steps to get into the backyard. And we've got this idea to save money. Maybe we could just use this existing door and take it off and just have access to it. How much is that? Seems logical. So then why is it you get 5 contractors in and you get 5 different prices? I think I'll give you a sense of a little bit of understanding. So I'm going to show you 2 scenarios. This first one is it's a nice, cozy addition, right? It's 16 feet square. How this one was built is on pier footings. So those think like a deck, right? You have posts, and you could army crawl underneath of it if you wanted to, but and it's wood post, vinyl siding. A shed-style roof is kind of a simple roof line, fiberglass shingles, aluminum gutters and flashing, and carpet, standard windows, a sliding glass door, and all of those things. They come into about right now about $128,000 to $145,000. Seems reasonable. You get the second company in. This is their idea of a cozy space to watch the snowfall, right? It is continuous concrete footings, brick and block foundation, right? So it's sealed underneath of that. You have a brick exterior or a hip style roof, and actually those dotted lines show kind of the roof line. So this is sloped in 3 directions, right? Arguable whether it's pretty or not, but that's what this one is. They've added 4 skylights and some custom windows and French doors and cathedral ceilings, right? And the idea here, instead of just extending the HVAC system, they put in a new one, right? That's where you can get 2 very different, it's more than $100,000 price difference between those 2. So what you end up with when you bring different contractors in and you help to have them help you understand what market value is and budget should be, you're getting very different images. You're getting either what that company tends to like to build, right? If most of their companies, their clients tend to be higher end, they're gonna get a reflection of those types of projects. Or they just want to get started in something inexpensive so that you'll hire them, right? So that's why you get differences. My best advice is hire a team that will help you figure out what it is that you want and then figure out the prices for that, right? At that point, if you want to take them out and get 5 people to bid it, then you're in a better position. I think what you choose to invest is an important piece that we sort of talked through here. One is a really important piece to analyze: how long do you think you're going to be in your home, right? If you're going to be there less than 3 years, it's a very different focus, right? You want to focus on grabbing market share. You want the most people that come into your house that are going to like it, and keep your costs low. If you're going to be there 5 years or more, do what you want. Have fun. Be smart about it. You don't have to paint your house purple because you like purple. It's not going to sell well. But there's things that you can, certainly do that's just for you, and really be selfish. Have fun with it. When you think about starting to engage in that journey with somebody to help you, understanding your own self is important, because there's 2 ways, from my perspective, is how you can go through this journey. And that's one where budget drives the design. And what I mean by that is, I have $130,000 to spend. I don't want to spend a penny more, so don't show me anything that's going to take me over that. Or design drives the budget. I don't know I've got an idea of what I want. You as professionals help me see what's possible, tell me what that costs, and then let me decide which pieces of that I want to do, right? And those are two very distinct differences. So if you know that about yourself going in, it'll help guide your process better. It's funny, I mean, how you choose is up to you, how you choose to live is up to you, and I wish I could remember who it was. It was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I heard somebody on TV, and I just happened across it. It was some larger-than-life person like Johnny Depp or some rock star, I don't even know. And it didn't even really hit me when I heard it. But he said, humans are the only species on the planet that get to choose the type of box they live in. And I'm like, yeah. Well, then it sunk in. A couple days later, I thought, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding. It's unbelievably true. You get to choose that. So, at the end of the day, when you go through the cost of your project is an accumulation of your design choices and the complexity of it, the quality of the products that are going in, and then what it takes, because we're remodeling, not building new, what does it actually take to modify your home to put this in there? That's what this is about. Those combination will give you the real budget for it. So, now that you've got at least your arms around how to get a realistic, meaningful budget, let's focus on some of the architecture, right? So, I think that when you do get with a team or you're interviewing teams, make sure that whoever you're talking to, you feel confident they're going to be listening to you. There really is a problem in the industry that focusing on what they think you're going to buy is really a poor way to do this. So if you find that somebody's just listening to you, what is it you want? I want this, and then they show you basically a mirror of what you said you wanted, they're just trying to find something that you're going to say, oh, I like that, let's buy it. And then they sign a project and go build it. It's more important to think about, have somebody that's listening to you about what you need and then showing you some different ways to actually accomplish it. And that goes to, is it multiple choices or just one when you're looking at designs? And then also making sure there's meaningful budgets associated with anything that they show you. It's very important. Selections are a big animal, and I will tell you that when you think about engaging in a renovation project, architecture is very important, but I submit to you, like what it's going to look like is 50% of the effort that it takes to properly plan a project. The other half of this is selections. So you want to understand how those are being managed. There's a very common choice, which is once the architecture work is done, is to send you on date night out to tile showrooms and cabinet shops and countertop companies. It's not a very fun way to go through the process, but it's if you're left to help make those decisions, or you go into the different showrooms and have Becky, who works at Mosaic Tile, trying to help you. She's wonderful at tile, but she only knows one single piece of your project. And so if you understand how it's all going to stitch together, that's great, but if you're relying on others to help you. There's another solution in the industry, which is choose from a set of predetermined selections. So if you go in and some love this way, you can have any tile you want as long as it's on that wall, right? That's how some manage it. And others will have a professional interior designer actually lead you through that whole process. So figuring out which of those works best for you is, I think, going to make your experience much more pleasurable. The other is, how are those tracked? Just imagine all the products that you've got. An average kitchen has 30 different products that are going to go into it. So who's going to lead, track those, mark them down, count how many we need, organize that whole thing? Sometimes it's you, or is it the company that you're hiring to help you with it? Quality level of products has a huge influence on the budget. So here is just a simple example. I took a faucet, right? So, and it's true. You can go on, I can't remember if this is Amazon or one of the box stores, I don't remember, but you can buy a kitchen faucet, have it shipped to your house, and spend under $34. I wouldn't do it, but you can get it. About $600 for a faucet, or $2,600, right? And it's truly everywhere in between. And then you can see that we have that same level of spread of decisions that have to be made across 30 products. It can be extraordinarily different from one end to the other. And I'll tell you that from our perspective, I would consider an inexpensive faucet is about $150. I would say most of the time, a reasonably expensive faucet's about $700. And every now and again, we'll have a client that'll spend $1,500 or $1,800 on a faucet. So it really does depend, right? I mean, there's lots of options. So analyzing that up front before you start, not only does it help you manage the time on the project, because you can buy all that stuff before you start, but you know your costs going into it. Because if you're making these all as you go, all control is gone of what you're going to invest. Scope of work is probably, as a contractor, I think the most important and most often overlooked portion of this whole journey that you may be going down. Scope of work is all about the details. It's writing everything down. You've got a clear, well-written scope of work, room by room and discipline by discipline is really the gold standard for doing this. And discipline, what I mean by that is, it's think of the different aspects. You have plumbing, electrical, heating and air conditioning, drywall, trim, flooring, paint, right? You can go on and on. All of those disciplines, and do them room by room. You might look at me and say, well, Ted, wait a minute. All I'm doing is a kitchen. It's one room. It's never one room, right? You may have, think about when you do a kitchen, you almost assuredly are going to have to bring a new electrical circuit into that space. How are you going to get it there? Well, I don't know where it is in anybody's home, but what often happens is it's down in the basement. It's down to get the wire across the house. We're cutting holes in the drywall in the basement downstairs to fish the wire through. Well, if you don't have that written down, A, you don't know that you're having holes cut in there, but B, who's paying to put it back, right? I'm telling you, if it's not written down, it's going to be a change order. It's going to be. Even though everybody knows you have to have an electrical circuit, but it takes effort to think it through. So that's where room by room matters. This right here is the general contractor's favorite tool. It is the 3-part form. Press hard so it goes through all the different sheets. You would not believe how many times I see families that are investing $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 and they've got one of those forms written. I would tell you a $100,000 project should be about a 12-page written scope of work. Otherwise there's holes, right? So if somebody's coming in, here's another clue. If somebody's coming into your home and it's the only person that you've talked to, there's holes, right? Meaning, if they don't have anybody from the production team coming in and looking at this, it's incomplete and it will cost you. Here's an example of, kind of how a well-written scope could look. You just go room by room. It's not intended to read, but you get room by room. This one happens to be drywall, right, for a bathroom and an entry, right? So list them room by room. This is probably my favorite point in the whole process, and so let's just pause for a minute and think about your project that you've been working on here. You've already worked through all of the floor plans. You know exactly what the shape of the room and how it's going to function. You've figured out all the lighting and where light switches are going. You've picked all your products. You have a scope of work written. Now you should sit down and review it, right? And this is where you actually sit down and in our company, we sit down with our clients and we read through all this. We confirm that the design is correct. So for you, it's just put your eyes on it and say, yep, this is exactly what I've expected. We talked about this, so yeah, that window's there. It looks exactly like what I want. Great. What about the selections? Let's go through that. This is the tile, this is the faucet, this is the shingle, whatever it is that your project is, just walk through it. Make sure it matches what it is that your goals are. Read the scope of work. Does it align with what you're understanding that needs to be done? Now you're very, very clear on everything that's happening, and it's a wonderful system. Now you can get a fixed price calculated for this. This is where I think probably most of the design build firms you would find here, I don't want to promise that because I haven't talked to them all, but will have some form of a production review. Can't emphasize this enough. Very, very important. For us, we call them a site study, But it's where after we have all those documents, we bring the entire production team out to your home. So we've got, I've got Don, my electrician, is in there, and he's looking, say, okay, this is the project that we're trying to accomplish. Look at the panel, figure out how many circuits we need to accomplish what we're doing. We come up with a strategy as to how we're going to get wires over, and if we have to cut holes, right? We're calculating all of these things. And you do that for every discipline that's involved. Not only are the surprises eliminated, but when they actually come out to start building this, they've all seen it. They've been able to, in many cases, coordinate it. In most remodeling, it's unusual that a plumber and electrician happen to be standing in your space at the same time trying to work. Most of the time, the electrician has the project for 4 days, then the plumber, and then the heating and air conditioning, and so on. But at the site study, they get to collaborate, right? I can't tell you how many times we've had a plumber saying, I need to get this open here so I can get my plumbing line. And the electrician's going, yeah, I was going to cut a hole here, but I could just use that hole, right? It's that kind of, collaboration. But what you get is you get very, very clear understanding and very, very accurate pricing on the project. The last piece that you should expect on every project are the contract documents, right? So plans with elevations, and I will tell you, even though for those that were here when I started, I said this is, mainly for mid-size and, larger scale projects. But even if you're replacing the stairs on your deck, draw it. Even if it's a sketch, right? A picture really is worth 1,000 words. A picture will help you convey exactly what the intention of the design is. That written scope of work, again, room by room, discipline by discipline. It's very, very important. Selections, you've identified all of them. They're written down, documented. So this is the bathtub that's going in. And general terms and conditions with a payment schedule. You would be, I want to say you'll be shocked, but I'll tell you, a very uncomfortable discussion is when you don't have a payment schedule, is that weekly conversation with the contractor stating, I need a check this week, right? Well, I'm not sure, have you finished enough? Yeah, no, we're on track, but I need another draw, to cover payroll and stuff. When you get a payment schedule built into the project, all that goes away, right? You agree up front, at certain milestones, payments will be due. No more uncomfortable questions. You either reached it or you haven't, and it's just a wonderful way to manage the process. So there you are. Those are the steps to eliminating as many of the frustrations of remodeling. Let's just face it, remodeling's hard. It's hard to live through. It's dirty and challenging. You've got strangers in your home. But when you follow these principles, you will be in a position to be very successful when you do the project. So, questions? Anybody have any questions?